You knew him in high school, you knew him in college, and you probably still know him at whatever stage you are in life. He pissed you off because everything just worked out for him. He had a hot girlfriend, the jocks and the nerds loved him, and with a charming smile, he could get away with anything. Meanwhile, it's 70 degrees in Chicago, and here you are, feeling sorry for yourself. This is Ferris Bueller's Day Off! So excited to do this movie, man.
Yeah, because I've seen this movie a good couple times, but you watched it like a lot, right?
It's next to Home Alone. Well, when it comes to like John Hughes directed projects, this is my John Hughes movie.
Okay.
When it comes to like John Hughes written projects only, Home Alone is the movie.
Sure.
Like, it's in terms of my movie, I mean, it's the one that I've seen the most.
Yeah, it might be this one as well for me.
Not Breakfast Club?
Well, I was gonna say between that or Breakfast Club, but I've probably seen Breakfast Club more actually.
I've seen Breakfast Club least than most people.
Least than most people. I just wanted to kind of. I know you wanted to play the Cold, but we're on a podcast and people are kind of listening.
Fucking be
to
professional.
I saw you try to kind of skip over it.
Yeah, and I would probably be pissed in the edit, but we're keeping all of this.
Yeah.
I've seen Breakfast Club less than most people.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ferris Bueller's really special for obvious reasons to me, man. I mean, obviously, like Home Alone, extreme wish fulfillment stuff. So as a kid, when you watch this, you're like, I want to be that guy.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like that feeling that the way people talk about SpongeBob. When you're a kid, you love SpongeBob and Patrick. When you're an adult, you relate so much to Squidward.
Yeah, sure.
And that's how I feel about Ferris Bueller, is that when you're a kid, you're just looking at Ferris as the coolest guy, the guy you want to be. And as you're growing up and as you're getting into like your mid-20s like I am, or even if you're having a quarter life crisis or whatever, you look at Cameron being like, dude, I feel you, man.
Yeah. I think like John Hughes is always really good at that sort of thing. I mean, that's been his philosophy, right? Is like believing that teenagers have legitimate problems and legitimate existential dread like the rest of us, because it's easy to brush them off as, oh, they're just dumb kids.
Yeah.
But I think he always took them very seriously in his writing, and it always shines through in no matter what the tone of his project is, because obviously Breakfast Club is more of a dramedy, right? It's really funny, but it also has a lot of really dark moments.
Totally.
And
he's always good at sprinkling that kind of stuff in, like sprinkling sincerity and like darker themes in there. I mean, Ferris Bueller has that for sure.
Yeah.
Especially what Cameron goes through and everything, but it's definitely way more of like a comedy.
Yeah, it's a much lighter tone. A lot of the, like you said, as a kid when I first saw it, it was like, it's the fun adventure, you know?
The stuff you're remembering is Rooney getting like attacked by the dog, or just like everyone donating money for Ferris's health fund. Yeah. Save Ferris on the water tower.
Yeah, of course. And then him rushing home and, jumping in slow motion.
We'll talk about it.
Yeah, we'll get to it. But I'm just naming iconic moments,
100%. And then, for me, like, I'm looking at the movie now much through the lens of Cameron.
Yeah.
Not because I'm like at that stage in life, but as you can tell from my synopsis, like that's kind of like where my mind was at when I was watching this movie, of how much of this movie is very much Cameron's movie.
Yeah. It almost has like Cameron's George Bailey and Ferris is like Clarence.
I was more thinking of like kind of how you always talk about how Marty McFly is like a main character that doesn't change, but people around him do based on his actions.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm going for.
Okay, yeah. But yeah, I guess Clarence and George Bailey is a great comparison.
Or Hitch. Or Cameron's Kevin James.
Yeah, that movie's weird, man. Those first 30 minutes are like undeniable.
Yeah, it's pretty fantastic.
Remember when I like sat you down to finally watch Hitch? This was a big contention in our friendship. I remember I was like, dude, you gotta watch Hitch. It's a classic Will Smith.
I don't remember the context of that at all. That's so funny.
And it's so funny. And then I remember by the end of it all, you and I were like, yeah, the first hour is kind of the only good part.
And the whole second half, you were like, oh man, why am I...
Well, the movie's good when it's Kevin James and Will Smith.
Okay, yeah.
And then it really much falls apart when it's just like, let's explore Kevin James on his own, or let's explore Will Smith on his own. And you're just like, no, well, the whole idea was like, the scene that everyone remembers in Hitch is him teaching him how to dance. Like, there's nothing better than that. He's like, listen, We're going nowhere else. We're here. Remember when Will Smith was okay to talk about?
Oh, God, I know, right? I hope we... No, let's keep talking about Hitch. Let's let this go as off the rails as I can get.
10 minutes in and I'm talking about Hitch, man. That's crazy. Anyways, let's talk about John Hughes a little bit. Okay. I very much consider this the ultimate John Hughes project.
Okay.
It has, like, all his staples. It definitely has teenage angst. It has wish fulfillment. It has Chicago in a major way, like in a huge way. He talks about, obviously, that this is not just a love letter to the city with like the big shots of like the architecture, but it's also a love letter to the people of Chicago. I kind of wanted to I know we usually don't do a lot of research and behind the scenes, but I kind of wanted to bring this up because it's like crazy.
Yeah.
So his agent kind of came up to him in the 80s and was warning him, hey, there's a writer's strike coming up. Agent came up and was like, you better start like writing something fast. You know what I mean?
Because you're going to have to stop writing at some point.
For a while. And John Hughes is infamous for being like an extremely fast writer. Like he wrote Breakfast Club in like 4 days. Shit like that, right?
Yeah.
And he said there's a quote where he kind of just thought of the sentence of like, I'm 17 years old and I have no idea where my life's going. And he just thought of that, and he's like, oh, that's interesting. He went to a studio exec at Paramount that he knew, that he was friendly with. And he was basically like, I want to do a movie about a kid who takes a day off from school. And that's all I know so far. And his studio exec friend, Ned, was like, yeah, go for it. Like, John Hughes had just so much power that he was like, yeah, go do that.
Yeah. I know. He's always said, too, that he typically likes to know where his movies start and where they end, but everything leading up to that, he just kind of just wings it while he's writing.
Absolutely. And he wrote Ferris Bueller in 4 days.
Fucking nuts. Yeah.
And apparently he had this like dedication of like he would sit down and write for 20 hours a day. Like he would have like like he would just have that like kind of like all in tunnel vision, which is wild. I mean, you're like, you went to screenwriting school, you've had experience writing all these scripts.
Can you do that?
No, but I'm just like, no. I'm like, so have you written
what's your take on fast writing?
I was more or less getting at, like, you understand that this is an insane thing.
Oh, yeah, fuck yeah, that's insane. When I was going to school, we had to bring in like 10 to 15 pages a week, you know?
Yeah, and, you know, there's writers out there that are always like, I don't outline, and John Hughes definitely seems to be like that type of guy, but... I think you'd be the first one to say, be like, that's not common.
Yeah, or at least not expected. I think, I guarantee you John Hughes knows how to outline and probably learned to outline and probably has done it before.
And he's also a master storyteller, so he just understands the mechanics of it.
Well, that's exactly. So when you do it enough, it just becomes kind of natural to you, like a language or something like that. So you just are able to do it without outlining. But most beginner writers 100% should outline, and don't underestimate how good outlining is for everything. Not even just the overall thing, but down to the small details. Before you write a scene, what's going to happen?
100%. This is the last quote I have when he's talking about how, like, he focuses more on characters than plot, especially this movie. It's not the events that are important, it's the characters going through the event. Therefore, I make them as full and real as I can. This time around, I wanted to create a character who could handle everyone and everything. So he basically had Ferris and Cameron. He knew that dynamic, which is the movie. You know what I mean? Cameron is the movie. He's the reason Ferris exists. Ferris is like less of a man and more of an idea. Like, there's a lot of Ferris-isms in this movie that are just iconic, but it is kind of like what makes this character just transcendent is that there's a lot of like philosophies that come out of this movie.
Oh yeah. He's hedonism personified, essentially, And I remember we talked about hedonism when we did Clerks, and I had the incorrect definition of it when I explained it, because I think at the time I said like that it means you don't really think things through and just do them. And it was like, I was mildly close, but the proper definition I actually wrote down just to be clear, because this movie hits on it like perfectly is the only reason why I'm stressing it a little bit more. The ethical theory that pleasure and the sense of satisfaction of desires is the highest good and proper aim of human life. And which still, like I said, I stand by that Randall is hedonistic, on Clerks,
Yeah.
But I just defined it. But with that being said, Ferris Bueller is literally that philosophy in one human being.
He's an interesting character, too, because he could come off as annoying and insufferable very easily. He could come off as too precocious and just being like, all right, dude, fucking like, yeah, but we all have to deal with real life while you're just living in the moment.
Yeah.
I wrote down a couple reasons why, like, he's such a great, like, charming hero, though. Like, why we love him. and I was like, we could maybe go through it together.
Yeah, let's do it.
First thing I did was he's smart at being lazy. Mm-hmm. Which is immediately charming, which is immediately fun, is that the scene opens with him, like, faking a fever, faking a sickness, right? And his parents are like, all right, buddy, you take care of yourself, you know? He obviously says that iconic line of just, like, the worst performance of my life or whatever.
Yeah.
But then he kind of goes through, like, how to properly fake being sick. And he said, don't fake a fever, like mom's gonna freak out.
Yeah, they're going to take you to the doctor, which is worse than going to school.
What you want to do is you want to fake a stomach cramp, and when you're bent over, moaning and wailing, you lick your palms. It's a little childish and stupid, but then again, so is high school.
Yeah, of course.
And immediately it's like, oh, this guy works so hard to just, like, slack off. And you're just like, I want to do that. I want to be like that. And he's immediately, like, charming, you know?
Yeah, I read somewhere, too, that he's, like, smart without being, like, a nerd. You know what I mean? He's like just the normal guy who just looked into, like, he got a computer as a gift instead of a car, so he learned how to use it. You know what I mean?
It's what every nerd dreams to be.
Yeah,
it's just like, I can be cool, but also very smart. And obviously, the definition of a nerd has changed way more than the 80s, but back then, there was a clear, like, path, and that's why this movie is so subversive. I'm just like, this guy's kind of everything.
Yeah, and portraying, being good at computers is not, like, a socially inept thing to look down. Like, you can be cool and know how computers work. That's dope. Possible, people.
Yeah, there is this thing about Ferris is that even his posters are so, like, weird. It's just, like, every band, everything, like, is on there. And it just seems like Ferris is a representation. He could be, like, any person. Like, you could put yourself in Ferris if you wanted to.
Sure.
And his whole thing is, like, from what I was watching this movie, is always like, what am I really going to remember 10 years from now? How I went to school and learned about, like, socialism in Europe?
Yeah.
Or is it going to be like that it's really great weather outside and I spent a great day with my friends?
Yeah. He has a very clear understanding of existence, at least for himself.
Yeah, I'm not saying that, like, the way he goes about things are right or wrong, but I'm just saying, like, that's the Ferris-isms that I'm talking about.
Yeah, exactly. But he knows what he wants. He has a very confident and clear understanding.
There's obviously that line,
life moves pretty fast. You don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it.
Gotta say, when it comes to the ending line of the movie, because he says it in the beginning, but then when he says it at the end, smiles, and it kind of just fades out. And I'm like,
freeze frames
we've
on him?
never ended a movie like this again. Like, this never, like, why can't we end movies like this again? I think the thing we geek out about in our reaction channel is, like, fucking they ended right at the exact moment they needed to.
Yeah, the perfect place for an ending.
Yeah, it's rare.
Yeah, it is. I know. We always geek out over the RoboCop ending.
That's one of the best.
Yeah, just in case anyone hasn't seen it, we won't spoil it, but you know what we're talking about if you've seen RoboCop.
Nice shooting, son. What's your name?
I just said I'm not going to spoil it.
Oh, God.
I don't know if you were listening, but I literally just said I'm not going to spoil it.
I was too caught up in the moment.
It is, it's a very life-affirming movie at the end of the day. Like, you can't come out of this movie in a worse mood.
Oh, absolutely not.
There's no way.
I watched it twice for this podcast. Last night and then this morning again.
Yeah.
Both times, just like a big fat grin on my face the entire time. It was dumb, actually, because I've seen this movie so many times, but it still affects me that way, you know?
No, I know. I think, like, you can feel the John Hughes stuff of, like, him having all these, like, Ruth Goldberg mechanics of, like, having, like, opening the door and having a dummy inside of his bed. It's always, like, a fun surprise of how he thinks ahead of literally everything, how he recorded a voicemail message ahead of time at his front door. I can't come downstairs because I worry in my condition I'll fall down.
Even, like, when he calls a mortuary, it redirects it to Cameron's house, and he's like, mortuary is not available right now. Like, and it's so, like... It's so satisfying because you're like, oh, he thought of everything.
Yeah, exactly. I know. And sometimes he really puts a gamble on Cameron involving himself, how he makes Cameron pretend to be his girlfriend's dad.
The last thing I have written down, at least, is... Well, I have two more things of why Ferris is still charming. One is, like, still a kid. So, like, it's set up, like, really early is that, like, when he's showering, he makes his hair look like a mohawk.
Yeah.
So he's not, like, again, he's not, like, too precocious, or he's not just, like, that's an adult in, like, a teenager's body. He still does the thing that kids do. We've all been in the shower with shampoo. We've, like, done our hair.
We've all mohawked our hair.
And we've sang in the shower. Like, it's such a, like, oh, that guy's a teenager.
Yeah.
And then another thing tied into that is that he does have problems. He has two big ones. One is doesn't own a car.
Yeah.
Immediately relatable, like trying to call up your friend that does have a car and not need to get rides. I'm not European. I don't plan on being European, so who gives a crap if they're socialist?
They could be fascist anarchists. It still wouldn't change the fact that I don't own a car.
Such a good line.
I don't know how he does it, man. I don't know how John Hughes writes shit like that.
Yeah, well, and Matthew Broderick delivers it with such like a casualness, like, because if you got a lesser actor, it could easily come off as like attention grabby, like I'm breaking the fourth wall, I'm going to talk to the audience, so I'm going to try to be as cool as I can. But Matthew Broderick does it in such like an effortless, relaxed way, like he almost like he's known you. The way he talks to you, you know what I mean? He's just the very like,
yeah,
yeah, this is my worst performance ever, but hey, what do I know, you know?
I always said that I called you up and I was just like, dude, Ferris Bueller, he's like my best friend.
Exactly, yeah, he really does feel like, you know, it's like a teenage version of like Steve from Blue's Clues talking to the camera.
Yeah,
like, it's like...
it really in that same like relaxed way.
Yeah, where you just feel like kind of safe and comfortable with this dude.
A very Jim from The Office move too, to every now and then not even say anything, but just to have a look.
Yeah, a little glance at the camera at the situation happening.
Especially the moment where, like, you know, his sister helps him out. I don't want to skip ahead, but when his sister helps him out and kind of like tells him to go inside, lay in bed, get sick, like covering him.
Yeah.
And he kind of just smiles at Rooney, smiles at his sister, and looks at the camera and smiles. And it's so like, it's not like a wink, but it's a more just like, damn, all right. Like, it seems so easy for him to look at the camera. And that's an example of just like some actors having it and some actors not.
Yeah, it's hard to pull that off in a, you know, well done way. I mean, like, you know, Frankie Muniz fucking killed it at that for Malcolm in the Middle.
Yeah.
Like, he was amazing at talking to the camera.
Oh my god, one of the best.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit about Cameron now?
Yeah, sure.
We can start here, just to see him in the car deciding if he wants to go.
He's like, he'll keep calling me.
Just keep calling me. Like, again, Alan Ruck is amazing in this, right? But, like, he could also come off as very insufferable. But he, like, tackles the character with a certain level of just, like, earnestness.
Yeah, and complexity, a little bit more than you think.
Cameron's also a type of person where you're like, why is Ferris friends with him? Mm-hmm. But, like, when you look into it, Cameron's a funny guy. Cameron's also a charming dude. Cameron can be the way Ferris is if he wanted to. Like, the fact that the small touch that I noticed is that, like, Cameron's good at, like, mimicking people. When they're at that viewing deck in Wall Street, how he's, like, kind of mimicking their hand movements and doing that. Or when he's at the baseball game, he's like, hey, bada, come on, do it with me. Hey, bada.
Yeah.
And, like, he's a charming, funny dude that is, like, kind of just has this weird quirks. And you can understand that, like, if he wasn't so tied up on himself, then maybe he could be the way Ferris is.
Yeah, he just has too many mental roadblocks. I mean, the way he phrased it in the movie was, you know, like, excuse my French, but he's wound up so tight, if you shove a lump of coal up his ass, a diamond will come out, or whatever, in 2 weeks, or whatever he said, you know?
Yeah, I know.
He has that funny, lighthearted side to him that gets brought out of him on occasion, but you can always feel it kind of go back in.
Remember when he's at that dinner, and, like, not dinner, lunch, at that fancy restaurant, and he, like, Ferris is talking about him in the bathroom, and then it keeps cutting back to Cameron.
Yeah.
And he's eating and just having a goofy time. And that one of the patrons in the restaurant kind of is looking at him weird, and he looks at him and he's like, yikes.
Yeah.
It's like, you can tell, like, that guy's loosening up when he wants to.
Yeah.
It's just, he gets in his own head.
Yeah, and, you know, we all have that side of ourselves a little bit, you know?
Yeah. A question for you when it comes to... Oh, wait, before we get to this, I want the museum scene is another one that stands out when it comes to Cameron.
Yeah, that's a very important Cameron moment, for sure.
It's kind of amazing that it's in this movie.
Yeah.
That's something that wouldn't show up in a high school movie nowadays.
Yeah, and I think, like, tonally, the movie has so many, and you mentioned it, but there are so many establishing shots that it uses whenever to establish the geography of where they're at. Like, really smooth, quick cuts of random little pieces of where they're at.
100%. Just the shot also of, like, all the kids holding hands as the teacher's getting them through the museum is such a nice touch. Like, John Hughes or someone in that department thought of that idea, and it would, like, immediately breathes life into that set.
Yeah, it just gives it so much personality.
And he does that throughout the entire movie. Like, when you first hear Ed Rooney's voice talking to the mom, right? You see these before you cut to Rooney for the first time. It shows these shots of the school and all the kids going to classrooms, and one of the kids, like, drops all his papers and he's picking it up, and it doesn't cut to a close. It's just on a wide while Rooney's talking on the phone. immediately it's like, that's a school I know, that's a school I've been to, those are hallways I've been to.
Yeah, and it does it, again, effortlessly. It's like a couple, like 3 quick little cuts before the scene starts.
100%.
Just to give you the energy of the momentum of the movie.
Really quickly, I want to get back to the museum thing. It's just there's so many scenes popping up in my head. And when we mentioned the school thing, I just immediately remembered, like, I love how, like, whenever the teachers are giving lectures, it cuts back to all these close-ups of, like, the kids' faces, like, literally melting. And what I noticed especially, aside from the obvious Bueller by the brilliant Ben Stein, like, no one's delivered a line better.
Clear eyes. That's all I think about now. It's like him doing those eye drop commercials.
He's also, like, he was an actual, like, economics professor, I think. So, like, that's why, like, he's good at just, like, spouting that shit out. Aside from that, the lighting in the classrooms is so, like, fucking brings me back, dude. Because I immediately know what that feels like of getting roll call, but it's too bright and it's 7 a.m. and you're like, so early. And
it's fluorescent bulbs. It's like all white in the room.
Going back to the museum scene and why it's important to Cameron, like you said, it does really well with the established shots of showing the art, them all looking at it. Obviously, the whole them like posing with the arms crossed, which is such a weird and cool move that they did. It's like it's edited really well, but I'm just like, that's so awesome. Like I wouldn't think of that. Yeah, that feels like pure artistic expression.
Yeah, John Hughes is so good at putting those like personality beats into it. Obviously, Breakfast Club did that really well with all them dancing, stoned, and they show that kind of
like how do you write that?
It's hard. It's fucking hard to convey that, especially when you're not a teenager. Because when you're a teenager, it's like we did have that free spirited, gonna make each other laugh all the time. We're gonna do stupid shit because we have this relationship with the world around us that like we don't have any of those real responsibilities. So this statue, I can go stand with it and pose with it, and it's funny because it's like, you look at the world differently,
And it's weird that he because we definitely block a lot of that shit out as we grow up. So it's kind of crazy that he was so in touch with that.
Yeah, he's great at tapping into that again.
And Cameron looking at this piece of art and he sees a girl and it cuts to close-ups of the girl and close-ups of him and it cuts back and forth and back and forth. And when it gets really close, her face is entirely obscured and he doesn't see anything. So the way I look at this scene, without looking it up, I just wanted to is Cameron's trying to gain meaning and he can't find it. Like he can't see himself or he can't see anything in the art. Because the whole point of art, we talked about Ferris Bueller, how like you can kind of see yourself in Ferris or Cameron or anything. And that's the point of art, is to be able to connect with it in that sort of way. And Cameron's in such like a state of fear and like simmering towards a mental breakdown that he can't see meaning or himself in art. Yeah. That's kind of how I look at it.
Sure. I mean, I actually did look it up. I had my own interpretation before I looked it up. My interpretation was similar, where the more distorted it gets, it kind of, he sees kind of the emptiness and kind of, I guess like the void of like after death or something like that, of like how, what does it all amount to, kind of nothing, like zooming in, because it's like a kid, right? It's like a little girl or something, or a little boy, a little girl. And so I think in my head, he saw it as like a revelation of like life is really fucking short and I should just enjoy it while I can. I looked it up and John Hughes actually did have a quote in a commentary track, I guess, over the movie.
Okay.
He talked about it. It says, "The closer he looks at the child, the less he sees, of course, with this style of painting. The more he looks at it, there's nothing there. He fears that the more you look at him, there isn't anything to see. There's nothing there, that's him."
Yeah.
So you're pretty much, you had it,
And then there's also like, that kind of reminds me of that conversation they have during the parade, him and Sloane have. It was like, so what are you interested in? And he's like, nothing.
Yeah.
And that couldn't have been the most real thing I've ever heard. Because we're all expected after high school or even after college to just like, well, now we should have it figured out. Now we should know what to do. But what if I just like put myself in something because I don't have anything else figured out? I just decide maybe this is the right path. And then I have my midlife crisis about it.
Yeah.
That happens to every generation.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, and there's a lot of art and a lot of movies that explore that for a reason.
I feel like this is really revolutionary to explore like a high schooler struggle with that.
Yeah.
To explore like a young man going through that struggle. Like a 17-year-old, because usually you don't get that perspective.
Who has their whole life ahead of him but doesn't have anything to look forward to.
And what makes John Hughes different is that adults John Hughes' age who would write stories like this wouldn't be able to sympathize with a 17-year-old not having figured out, because they would come at it with a sense of like, it's what we all do when we look at young people. It's like, oh, well, you're young. You don't have to know anything.
Exactly.
Why are you anxious?
Yeah, exactly.
And like John Hughes had that sympathy for a young man because like we've all been there. When you're in high school, even though every adult tells you, listen, high school doesn't really matter. Of course it matters. That's your entire world.
That's
8
your
hours
life.
a day, 5 days a week. That's all you're thinking about.
Yeah, and as you approach graduation too, it's easy to think, am I going to see my friends again? What the fuck? Like I'm transitioning. I'm like now quote unquote like an adult, right? I'm shifting into a different person.
And that's a struggle that Ferris is having too, remember?
Yeah.
Like, even though Ferris is like, take it easy, let's just live in the moment, a big part of that is he confesses. He's like, what am I going to do about Sloane? She has another year of high school left. And we have the summer. I'm going to work. Cameron's going to work. We're going to see each other on weeknights.
Yeah.
But that's it after that, you know? Like, Ferris has that feeling too. It's like, we're almost at the end of our ropes. But his mentality is just like, we're almost at the end of our ropes. Let's fucking enjoy it. Let's not stress about it.
Yeah, whatever happens, happens. We can't control it, so let's just have fun while we can. You know, it's like the ending of Grease. You know, they say, like, we might never see each other again. And, you know, John Travolta's like, nah. I don't remember his quote, but he says something like that.
No, there is that famous quote where John Travolta says "nah" in Grease. It's on the footsteps in like the Burbank, like it's there.
Yeah, then they drive off in a flying car. That ending is bonkers, dude.
I love it so much. So we saw that movie in theaters recently. I think it was for Valentine's Day, right?
I think so. Yeah, it was for something like that.
Well, so not recent. It's almost a year ago. God damn.
Yeah.
Holy shit. Anyways, yeah, and I remember the moment that really like stood out to me because I was seeing it in a theater for the first time. So I was like, I wonder what. And I thought Grease Lightning was gonna be crazy to see on a big screen, and it was. Mm-hmm. But for some reason, when I saw Sandy, like when he was singing Sandy,
yeah,
and
the drive-in,
and the blue light projection was right behind him, and he was singing. I'm like, oh, this is cinema. This is like.
It's actually a really well-made movie, dude. Every song in that soundtrack is catchy. That's one I think I would love to podcast about. I mean, obviously, there's a lot in that movie that does not age well, but
yeah, no shit.
There's like some pretty terrible
and
things.
All the kids are like 50 years old. Like,
I know.
There's this one dude, like one of like John Travolta's friends in there, that's literally a 50-year-old man. And he's like, I hope I get to go to prom. What are you doing?
I know, can't she get me a friend?
God.
Anyway.
That choreography, them on the benches, I'm like, how did they not fall?
Can I share with you a really quick kind of fun fact I found?
About what?
Ferris Bueller.
Oh, we're back to that movie?
Yeah. I know, right? Oh, no, I want to keep talking about Grease. No, so I want to say Edie McClurg. I'm going to say Edie.
Best part of the movie.
Okay, cool.
Funniest part of the movie.
She plays as a neighbor on Dickie Roberts, former child star with David Spade. That was my introduction to her.
You've mentioned that movie like 4 or 5 times to me in person off camera.
It was a big part of my childhood, you know?
Fucking you with that, Jingle All the Way. What's another one?
Oh, they'll come to me, I'm sure.
Anyways, go ahead.
She plays as a neighbor of the main character. Because you know the concept of Dickie Roberts?
Yeah, you've said it to me many times.
Okay, so for listeners, I'll just sum it up really quick. Dickie Roberts is played by David Spade. He's a washed-up child star who's trying to have a big comeback. And he can't connect with his youth anymore. So he relives his childhood. He hires a family. Basically, it's an excuse for David Spade to act like a kid and do kid stuff. Mm-hmm. You know, it's kind of like a Billy Madison type of movie.
Yeah.
But the secretary from Ferris Bueller plays the neighbor. And she goes up to them. The mom is pushing David Spade in a stroller because, you know, it's like funny.
Yeah.
Anyway, she goes up and says, your leaves are falling into our backyard again. And she's like, oh, Mrs. Gertrude, I'm sorry. It's becoming a nuisance. And we're trying to be good neighbors, but you're really making it hard. And she looks at David Spade, she's like, oh, what do we have here? Aren't you a little big for a stroller? And David Spade's like, huh.
Aren't you a little big for a sidewalk?
Jesus Christ!
And then he ends up like doing a David Spade rant to just mimic, you know, roasting her weight. But
right.
Terrible. Anyway, though, that's how I remember her. And as soon as I did recognize her when I watched,
you just bursted out laughing. Okay, well, this is a great segue because it's something that I really wanted to talk about because no small parts. Supporting characters that show up for 5 minutes are characters.
Yeah.
Starting with let's start with the secretary, right? Mm-hmm. She's in most of the movie, right? So she's not like for a 10-minute scene, but she's introduced as someone that like transfers a call to Rooney, and she takes out a pencil, and then she takes out another pencil, and it's such a great, funny introduction. She has such a great dynamic with Rooney. At one point, she was like, geez, you sound like Dirty Harry.
Yeah.
And he does like a small like Dirty Harry impression. He's like, I'm doing the Clint Eastwood squint for listeners.
For listeners who aren't watching the video
And he's
version.
like, thanks.
Yeah, he's like all flattered. He's like, hell yeah.
And yeah, she just has these great lines where she gets to be like, yeah, all of them love Ferris, the sluts, the butts, the chops,
Yeah, the dickheads, whatever she says.
Yeah, she's just wonderful.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, she's amazing. That scene.
It kind of feels like His Girl Friday, where she's going back and forth with
Yeah,
him.
it
You know?
almost reminds. Yeah, or like the Daily Bugle and the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies or something.
Which is like, again, like I think
Very His Girl Friday.
But
Yeah.
it's like they could be in a room together. They could be in their own like play, and I would watch it.
yeah, totally. That scene in the office when Rooney is under the impression that the girl's dad is actually Ferris disguising his voice. Remember how he like tells him off? It's like, kiss my big white butt.
And she gets the phone call from Ferris, and the music like dun.
Yeah. I don't know if I ever told you this. I might have when we first did our podcast, so this story sounds familiar. I'll just repeat it for listeners. In high school, we had to every week reenact movies, and we did like live projections on screen for everyone, kind of like to announce all the, when prom will be coming up soon, yada yada.
Yeah.
And one of the challenges that we always do is reenacting a movie scene, like shot for shot. And then
that's fun.
We get live callers, and whoever guesses it first wins the golden DVD. That was like the thing,
Yeah.
And so, one week though, someone did that scene from Ferris Bueller, and I did Cameron.
Yeah.
So I had to do the whole voice, like, well, you ought to be sorry, like, whatever, And so
it's kind of just like biting your teeth and talking to your.
Yeah, it's like jutting your jaw out.
Well, sir,
we have some family business to take care of.
That's pretty good.
But so that I had to do Cameron for that sequence in high school. I remember. When I had to direct it though. I did the Reservoir Dogs opening, like when they're all walking in slow motion. No words spoken in mine. It was just
How
that
old were
opening.
you?
I was 17.
That's fucking tracks.
I tracked when I did the credits too, and I tracked down the font and the color shade and like
got the yellow.
Yeah.
Heyday Films.
Yeah, exactly. So I thought it was the coolest thing ever.
No, wait. Was it Band Apart or Heyday?
It was Band Apart. Wait, no.
No, Band Apart
came after for Pulp Fiction. Yeah.
Because the logo was Reservoir Dogs.
Yes. Anyway, though, so.
But yeah, Secretary's wonderful. I don't really have much to say about her except that she just has some of the best lines, and like it's an example of like how that could have been a nothing character.
Yeah. But they really kind of squeeze the character dry. Like every line has like characterization for her.
It's like when Jean comes and complains to her and everything, and she's remember when Jean comes in the office, the maitre d' at the restaurant.
Oh yeah. He has like all his nose is all scrunched.
The thin mustache.
Yeah.
Also, just a physical comedy of him like picking up the dollars and. It's like who's Squidward's nemesis?
Oh, Squilliam Fancy Sud.
It's Squilliam Fancy.
I'm pretty sure that's it. Yeah, Squilliam. I'm pretty sure that's it.
All right, let me look it up real quick.
Yeah. Verify this for me. Fact check.
Squilliam Fancy Son.
Squilliam Fancy Son.
The main difference is that I'm looking at the photo of Squilliam right now. The main difference is that he wears a robe and he has a unibrow.
Yeah, he has like unibrow that moves. It adds to his like snootiness. He's like, oh yeah, well, hello, Squidward.
He's always with like ladies and like coming out of a limo. Anyways, a lot of Squilliam energy.
Yeah.
That's probably the most millennial thing we've said.
Yeah, of course.
Again, like another character that I could see in a different movie be just this like angry man that is just like, what are these kids doing here? But John Hughes made him into this like bougie, eat the rich type role. You know what I mean?
Oh, totally.
Where you just like, oh, you love to hate this guy.
Or the people that they paid to watch the car, how they go on their own joyride.
I had the valets in there.
The valets, yeah.
Something interesting there is that they cut to that whole Star Wars music, which if they did that now, it would have been so forced and cheesy. But because it was in the 80s, it like was like, oh, they got Star Wars.
Yeah. It was more. Yeah, it was cooler to do it then.
Because there was less Star Wars. Two more I have is school teachers. We already mentioned Ben Stein as the guy who does Bueller. The last one, he's not a small character, but he's just a character that I was given way more depth than I thought he would, is the dad.
Oh, okay.
Not depth, but just moments that are really funny.
Yeah.
Small stuff, like the way he's like, all right, well, you want to wrap a hot towel around your forehead. Hey, son, pulling for you. And he does this little fist, and I'm like, it's so funny.
I thought you were going to mention Charlie Sheen's character, too.
Oh, yeah.
He's like a big one, too.
Fuck, yeah. He's a huge one. I think he has such a big scene. I was going to mention him during when we talk about the sister. But he's, I mean, yeah, that's like a star-making performance. Like, that's really, it's such a good scene. That's like unfortunately what happened to Charlie Sheen being an insane person, but it's funny, we've talked about Charlie Sheen a lot. We just did Hot Shots.
Yeah, this is kind of a Charlie Sheen month.
This is a huge Charlie Sheen month for us. We're taking it back on the Patreon. We're going to be reacting to 2.5 Men.
Oh god. I know, every January it's like Charlie Sheen month.
But yeah, I mean, John Hughes does this kind of stuff with all those small characters having little moments all the time. He did that in Home Alone with Santa Claus and stuff like that.
Yeah, of course. The janitor on Breakfast Club.
Yeah, 100%. Also in Home Alone, the store clerks, you know what I mean? Or the police officer chasing after him. They all feel this. He builds worlds where people are people.
Yeah, and they feel celebrated too. I mean, obviously they're not nice characters in it too, but it feels like it's almost just happy to be in the world. You know what I mean? Good and bad.
Yeah. Now, this is a very dude movie, for sure. But, and, like, Sloane is, I like Sloane. Very charming. With Ferris, those three have a great dynamic together.
Yeah.
But Sloane is kind of like a version of a trophy wife in this movie. Mm-hmm. That's kind of why she doesn't have much of a character to her. But the other primary lead, like, female character is the sister, who I think is super important. And someone that I kind of, like, when I watched this movie as a kid, kind of phased out of my mind as an important part of the story. But I'm like, oh, her and Cameron kind of have, like, this similar trajectory.
Yeah, where you can't help but resent people who have the things that they want. I mean, like, Charlie Sheen phrased it the best, his character, when he says, like, so you're pissed at your brother because he got away with ditching and you didn't.
You could ditch. It's like, well, yeah, I know I could.
Yeah, but I won't get away with it, so it's his fault, kind of thing. That you can't get away with it.
100%. And she's like, it's very believable to me. Like, again, this character could be annoying, but it's very believable why she's so uptight. Because if I had a sibling that could just, like, coast through life the way he does, and I was so uptight the way I was, I would have that perspective too. And when I was younger, in high school, I was not like Ferris. I think it's pretty obvious I wasn't Ferris. And I would look at the people there would be people in my high school that were kind of like Ferris, that were friends with everyone. They got great grades. They also were like athletic. They got the hot girlfriend, all the stuff that I said in my synopsis. And I would be upset. I would be like, fuck, like, why? Like, why does that kid get to fucking have it all?
Yeah.
And I couldn't locate my feelings when I was in high school.
Exactly. No one was emotionally articulate enough to figure that out when you're young.
I'm thinking back now and remember how much anger I had. And I very much relate to the sister. We've all been there.
Oh, me too, completely. I mean, like, you and I, I'm pretty sure relate to this, but I was very straight edge in high school.
100%.
I didn't sneak out. I didn't do drugs. I didn't drink or any of that stuff that's in high school. Looking back, I kind of regret it, to be completely honest. I'm kind of like, it's the mindset of like, why did I?
It's a thing a lot of people our age talk about, though. Yeah. Like, I'm always like talking with friends about, like, God, I wish I just had a little bit more fun.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I'm not condoning teenage drug use or anything like that. But
well, we're not even. I don't think like we're talking about just doing drugs. We're talking about just like taking it easy a little bit.
Yeah, doing a little rebellion. Nothing wrong with a little rebellion.
And also just like not stressing out so much about a college application. Like,
yeah, exactly.
It's not your entire life.
I know. I mean, like, I remember when I was young, I had people like that would pressure me to do stuff that I didn't want to do, and of course that happens. But it almost gave off a little bit of the Ferris Bueller-y stuff,
Yeah.
Like when I was in a band in high school, we would play in the garage.
Yeah.
And it was at my friend's house. My friend's house's garage, and I was the drummer. Neighbor across the street called the cops on us. Didn't say anything. It was on a Saturday afternoon.
Didn't give a warning?
No warning at all. It was a Saturday afternoon. Called the cops.
Jesus.
Fucking stupid, in my opinion. I understand if we're loud and obnoxious and want to tell us to stop. That's one thing, but just go straight to the cops.
I mean, you were also throwing eggs at his house, so like, makes sense.
For the record, that was a joke. But I think point is, though, cop came. the dad of the house came out and talked to him and said, oh, maybe you can just go up and talk to him and just see if there's a time that can work, yada, yada. But after the whole thing happened, my friends were saying, dude, just play anyway. We need to practice. Just play it anyway. And I'm like, I'm not going to keep playing because they called the police on us. And it's probably me that's the reason. The drummer's the loudest one.
Yeah.
But they're like, yeah, but I mean, just play light, you know? And I was like, I'm not going to. And everyone, of course, was just like,
yeah,
giving me shit for it.
I mean, reasonable too. Yeah, I will say, here's the thing. I also think that the Ferrisisms come out of a place of privilege as well. I think it's okay to acknowledge that not everyone has like the ability to just be like, well, I don't need to focus on my college application. I need to take it easy a little bit. Life's short, whatever. Yeah. I know some people are just like, I need to do well so I can get the hell out of this town.
Sure,
you know, I get that too. But there's things you can take from it still, which is just like, I think a simple thing that everyone can take is the line that is the most famous, which is like, if you don't stop and look around for a while, things might pass by or whatever.
Yeah, the message it's trying to convey isn't condoning fucking around and forgetting your responsibilities and whatever. It's more of like, it's okay to take a moment to enjoy things. It's okay to, like you said, not be so uptight. Or if you have the thing, if you want to go to college, like, it's okay to work hard to take it. Whatever it is you want, be honest with yourself with what you want. Do you want to have fun? Go fucking have fun. You know?
Do you think Ferris is a bad friend?
I think in real life, it's hard to say because, like, you know Ferris is doing everything for Cameron. He's trying to get him to lighten up and whatever, but there are certain things where it'd be nice if he respected boundaries. You know what I mean?
Like, yeah,
like the car, for example. Just take a different car, man. You know what I mean? That's such a dangerous thing to throw your friend.
Cameron has a car.
Yeah, exactly. It's such a dangerous thing to throw your friend under the bus for after he said no explicitly several times.
Now, the thing that the movie's obviously trying to say by the end is just like, I could have stopped you. Mm-hmm. I wanted to do it.
Cameron played a role in it too, for sure.
But at the same time, you know your friend's a kind of a pushover. And if you want to be friends with them, don't take advantage of that.
Yeah.
I'm saying this as a person who fucking loves Ferris more than anything.
Yeah.
But it's just like such an interesting thing that like...
But that's movie rules. We're putting this to real life.
Exactly. Again, I think the message of the movie is that like, you know what you really want to do. And sometimes you have friends that kind of push you to the direction that you want to go, but you're too scared to.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think it's important to have friends that kind of push you out of your comfort zone.
100%. Yeah, and Ferris is obviously, that's all he does, you know?
100%.
The last thing he wants to be is comfortable.
Speaking of, they're in the like car. Cameron's like, we got to get back, man. We got to get back home. I know you don't give a shit, but we got to get back. Mm-hmm. And he's like, you think I don't care? He's like, you don't think you saw anything great today? And he was like, no, I didn't. Soon afterwards, they're in the parade, and suddenly you hear Ferris's voice. He's like, this goes out to my friend Cameron, who thinks he hasn't seen anything great today. Yeah. And the man just starts singing Donka shit.
I know, right on the parade float.
It's Twist and Shout and Donka Shane back to back.
Yeah.
In between, Cameron and Sloane have that conversation of what they want to do, which is, we already talked about that.
Yeah.
I love the moment of just like, Sloane asking, like, what do you think Ferris is going to do? Become a fry cook.
Yeah.
Just like, obviously that's not in Ferris's mind of what he's going to do in the future. Who fucking knows?
Yeah.
It's one of the best scenes in like movies. It kind of just reminds me of the feeling I get when I watch like Good Morning and Singing in the Rain.
Sure.
Where I'm like, oh, I mean, there's nothing better than this.
Pure joy.
Pure joy.
Yeah.
The scene, and then when it cuts to Twist and Shout, it's like transcendent to me. What stands out to me, and I've said this to you many times, is that, and feel free to jump in on this, I know I'm just going on a rant.
No.
But what stands out to me is that like when he's doing Twist and Shout, the way it cuts back to the people in that parade.
Oh yeah, that's the main thing that stands out, is like just seeing people of all types of cultures and whatever, right? Just all having a great time, being united by the Beatles.
I know. Cutting to the window wipers, the construction workers dancing. That's a true, like, I love Chicago. We're doing this, you know? And apparently they shot it during an actual parade. They got a real float out there of their own float. And from what I've heard, they didn't tell anyone that they were going to shoot a movie. And they shot, you could tell a lot of the lenses are long. And they shot from far away, but it's like they actually shot it at an actual parade.
That's crazy. I didn't know that. That's funny.
That's why when you get that wide of Ferris singing Twist and Shout, and like, you see a fucking bunch of people there.
I know, and it looks great. It's such a good angle, and there's like thousands of people on camera at once.
And you see Matthew Broderick in the middle dancing, and it's like, that's real. I mean... Yeah. The last podcast we did with Starship Troopers, and you and I were talking about how much we love a lot of extras on a scene.
Yeah, just cram as many people.
But and this is not even extras, this is real people, but I'm just like, God, this is like Chicago. We're here. It's such a beautiful scene.
Yeah, you've been to Chicago, right?
Yeah. It's an amazing city. And I went when it was like consistently 70 degrees. I went in August. It was a nice cool breeze the entire time. So it wasn't that freezing Chicago weather or the windy Chicago weather that usually people get.
Sure.
And so I went during a time that Ferris would be having his day off, I felt like. And the city's so beautiful during that time.
Yeah.
It really is. It like the architecture is what stands out.
That's so cool. I want to go sometime. I've still never been.
It's a great food city, but it's also a city where if you take the architecture tour, it takes you down like the river or whatever, and it, like you can go on a boat and it, like the tour guide will show you how like architecture has evolved here.
Wow.
And like how through time they went through more square buildings and stuff like that. As I'm saying it, it sounds kind of like a dull.
No, it sounds interesting to me, but
No.
I get what you're saying. Yeah.
But I'm just saying, like, if I was younger, I would not enjoy something like that. But I saw some kids there being like, whoa, you know?
Yeah.
Because the city's so beautiful that way.
Yeah, and if you've never seen anything like it, you want to take it in.
And it's true, just like movie star, movie magic shit, what he's doing there. You know what I mean? Like, that's something that I'm like, oh, no one else but Matthew Broderick could pull this scene off.
Yeah. I know. I think, like, my parameter, I don't know if that's a word, but for what makes a good music video is when you hear the song, you subconsciously picture the video. That's my personal thing. It's probably pretty popular to think that way, but with that being said, when I hear Twist and Shout, I always picture a parade because of this movie. Yeah. And that's not even the music video. I know that, obviously. It's a celebration of the song.
No, but even I think what you're just saying is that what happens like when a song is used in a movie and now you immediately associate it with that.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's timeless, this scene. I don't know what else to say about it. During all this hullabaloo, we have like one of the great movie villains, Ed Rooney, the Dean of Students, which is like a great idea for like who would be the antagonist to Ferris, Cameron, and Sloane. Like,
oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Oh, it'd be the Dean of Students.
Yeah, who believes that like he's gonna have a negative impression on the youth, basically.
And what the movie does really well, what I loved, like any like big like broad blockbuster type movie would do, is that if you have like this bad guy that's such a clear bad guy, fuck him up. Like the way in Jurassic Park, Nedry, when he dies in the most embarrassing, grossest way. Yeah. Ed Rooney gets fucked up so hard.
Oh, I know. Well, I think that's what's so funny about him is like he doesn't really have an impact on the story at all. You know what I mean? He's just kind of off to the side, trying to do it, but always failing in every scene.
Well, that's what's brilliant about it, is that these kids are going to do what they want to do. You can't stop them. That's what it's trying to do.
Exactly. It's a very unique type of villain. It's hard to pull that off because there are movies where you want the villain to pose a legitimate threat or to actually like derail, add complications to the story or anything like that.
They only meet one time.
Yeah.
In the movie.
Yeah.
And Ferris doesn't say a single word to him.
Yeah. Yeah. They have a brief, it's funny, they see each other briefly earlier when he pretends to be the dad in the trench coat and like kisses her right in front of him.
So that's how they do it in that family.
I know.
He's like, well, is daddy gonna get a little kiss? Are you kidding? And then she like makes out.
So weird.
Also, I gotta say, fucking Sloane, man. Early crush of mine.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Back in the day, it was just like, God damn, like Ferris, you're killing it in life.
You're winning.
Anyways, but something to touch on is that the actor's a monster.
Yeah.
Sex offender. Fucking shame, because he is a great like character actor. Like I saw Hunt for Red October recently.
Oh, he was in that movie.
And he helps like Alec Baldwin's character figure out what these Russians are doing with the Red October ship. It's like, what are these doors? And he kind of explains it. It's a great scene. And I was like, oh fuck, that's Rooney. Like I immediately thought of that. It's a shame. He's amazing in this movie.
Yeah.
It's a great performance. It's like pitch perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. His character is constantly on lists that I see of like villains who did nothing wrong kind of thing. I always thought those lists were funny.
Well, I mean, he like breaks into his house.
He goes to crazy lengths for sure.
Like, you didn't do nothing wrong. He leaves the school, goes on this vendetta against one student.
The core of I was gonna say, he doesn't go about it in a good way at all. But the core of it, he is just doing his job, and he sees a student that's ditching, and he's just trying to hold him accountable.
His job is not to be a detective and leave school and now forget all his other responsibilities.
I heavily agree. It's just funny to put him on lists of like villains who technically weren't really villains. He was just an office dude trying to do his job.
Yeah, but he plays it like a villain, though.
Yeah.
Especially he's like... One of my favorite moments for him, I will say, is when he's running across the hallway. He runs and then slowly walks when he passes a classroom, and then runs, slowly walks.
It's the impression. It's the idea of order. It's the illusion of it, you know?
Yeah, and the school is like pristine white. Like,
Yeah. Which, oh man, what's his name? The principal on Breakfast Club.
Oh,
You mess with the bull, you get the horns. Yeah, exactly. But I was gonna say, which one do you prefer as a villain? You know?
Oh well, the more menacing one is the Breakfast Club one, because that one is just like that guy's straight up abusive.
He's actually a darker character too. Yeah, he's like verbally abusive.
So if you want to talk about it from like a drama standpoint, that when it comes to just like I want to just see this guy get ripped apart, it's Ed Rooney.
See him get attacked by a dog, especially like it pays off so well at the end when, like you said, when they do meet in person, how you just see his torn up shoe appear on frame, and you're like, oh, that's him.
Oh yeah, it's great, and you've kind of forgotten about him at this point because like, when he breaks into the house and Jean sees him, she kicks his face and screams.
Yeah.
Which I also love the phone call she has with 911. She was like, he's in my house, I'm a young girl, I'm very cute, and I'm protective of my body.
I know. And she says, like, if you're still down there, I called the police and I have a raging case of herpes.
Yeah, like, I also love when he, like, first, like, leaves school and is out for Ferris.
Yeah.
He enters this, like city square type area or whatever. He's down the street and he opens up like the lid in his sunglasses and he's kind of looking around and he sees one place and he spots it.
Yeah.
And you realize he just went inside this like kind of bar pizza restaurant.
Thinking Ferris must be here.
Yeah, I just love that his idea, like, this is where the kids hang.
I know, yeah, exactly. He goes up to the arcade. He's like, your ass is mine.
So clearly out of touch. And then that girl does a great job.
Yeah, without saying a word, that look.
She just looks at him, takes like the straw and spits the Coke in his face.
And I always thought it was funny. I remember when I first watched it, I had to rewind it because remember how the cap off of the scene was like adding in the sound bite of the Pac-Man death noise?
Oh yeah.
He's like, I looked and I was like, they weren't playing Pac-Man, they were playing karate. They were playing like this karate. What was it called? I wrote it down.
You wrote the game down.
Yeah, I did. Karate Champ.
Yeah.
But apparently there was a Pac-Man somewhere else in the scene. Everyone just like, oh yeah, then they had sounds from this and that. And I was like, was the audio choice because it was a funny way to end the scene.
That was 80 yard in. Don't try to make excuses. Reddit forums, shut up.
I know. Well, you know what's funny though is I bet I probably am wrong. I bet in the actual bar there really is a Pac-Man there or something.
Sure.
But still, yeah.
Well, we all know the reason they did it. It works.
Yeah, it's a great way to end the scene. But I remember I like Googled it. My nerdy ass.
So many sequences in this movie, speaking on that, are like, I can't tell if this was in the script or if this was the edit. Where they figured this out. I mean, it could have been like a marriage of both, right?
Especially for comedy, I'm sure. Editing comedy is like a whole beast because now you control the timing.
Yeah.
You know, it has a huge influence in whose facial reactions you're showing to the thing they're saying. Like, you can completely change the joke.
And this movie has a balance of like, you know, brilliant comedy editing, right? Knowing when to cut to a close-up or when to use a close-up. But then it also has like very stylistic and weird type of like filmmaking, right? Especially, again, the museum scene, which just seems like very like, what am I watching? You know, it's really cool. And it's so expressionistic. Like when it's like showing Ferris and Sloane kiss, and it cuts back to Cameron. It's so like,
yeah.
I don't know. It flows like butter, and I don't know how they did it.
Well, it's characterization. You know, you see the contrast between, you know, Ferris being happy with someone else and just enjoying the thing, and then Cameron's having an existential crisis. It just adds more texture to the cuts.
So after the parade sequence, they're going back home. They realize that, oh my god, the valets have been driving the shit out of this.
Oh yeah, the Miles went crazy on it.
The Miles went crazy. Cameron has a mental breakdown, and which is such a dumb teenager idea. I'm just like, okay, we'll park the car in reverse and see what happens.
Oh yeah, they like lift the car and just have it.
Yeah, the Miles will go back. Like, it's such a dumb idea. But Ferris is like, that should work.
Yeah, because I thought that was like just a punchline because he says it earlier in the movie.
We'll go backwards.
Yeah, I thought that was like a joke he was saying.
They're trying anything because Cameron knows he's fucked.
Yeah, they should have gotten Danny DeVito from Matilda to do it.
The sawdust.
Well, the sawdust, but also remember how they actually like cracked it open and reversed the miles?
Oh, yeah.
And he's like proudly showing his son. It's like, son, one day all this will be yours.
We got to do Matilda, man.
Oh, we will. Make no mistake. We will do Matilda. I love that movie.
Okay, so this is just like a wonderful scene. This is so... It has everything in it that I love, right, about John Hughes, which is like... It has a bit of comedy. It has a bit of like these friends bonding with each other in their last stage of just like teenagehood. You know what I mean? They're talking about like how they're gonna miss each other. It also has a character having a revelation about like he's too scared in his entire life. He needs to take chances. That's in like kind of a lot of John Hughes movies, right?
Yeah.
And once he realizes the whole thing like isn't going back, the numbers aren't going back, he finally has this breakthrough moment. He's like, I'm gonna take a stand.
Yeah.
The quote here is, I'm not gonna sit on my ass as the events that affect me unfold to determine the course of my life. I'm gonna take a stand. What is that, like a Shakespeare monologue? Like, what is it? Like, that's such a beautiful piece of dialogue.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it reminds me of Clerks a little bit.
Yeah, 100%.
You know, in a completely different stage of life and different context and all that.
It very much is like what Clerks was about too.
Yeah, it's just as life affirming as that, you know, because I think that's just it's so easy to feel like you're coasting through it, you know, by being at the mercy of what people expect of you. I mean, I feel like also The Graduate deals with that too.
Yeah.
Which is like, you know, that's...
We gotta do The Graduate sometime.
Yeah. Dustin Hoffman aside, you know, the messages of The Graduate. It was cool to see the movie get serious for like just a moment too.
It gets a little serious before that when he's truly frozen in time.
But he goes catatonic, but it's still used for comedy. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. When it cuts back to them in the hot tub and he's on the diving board.
It's still a funny moment. But then when he actually opens his mouth in that scene, when he realizes that he truly is fucked.
In the garage?
When he's like, okay, you know what, I'm going to face this. Because that is such a universal thing, right? When you break something or anything like that and you haven't faced your parents about it yet.
But on top of that, his dad seems to be very abusive, like verbally abusive to him.
Yeah.
If not physically. He's made it clear that his dad only loves the car.
Yeah.
And obviously you don't know the extent of it because you're just hearing it through Cameron. But with how scared shitless he is all the time, you can only imagine.
You can read between the lines, for sure.
Part of me always wish we saw his dad even for a little bit, and I wish it was some like absurdly like big star like Gene Hackman.
from the 80s, like at the time.
Yeah, like it's very aggro. But I like that you don't see the dad. I like how it's just through Cameron's eyes.
Yeah.
Now, the brilliant part of the scene is that you could end it there. You could just be like Ferris and Sloan be like, all right, good on you, buddy. And then the scene goes away to Ferris doing his final run. And what I always interpreted as the universe really tests Cameron. Of just being like, let's see if you really have the balls. If we put this car over the garage and it truly crashes, will you still have the balls to take a stand?
Yeah.
Because, you know, he could have, like, again, it's so brilliant and kind of ballsy to do that. Because the car literally flies off the garage. They all look at it. Ferris is like, you killed the car.
I know. And it was a nice way to wrap it up, too. And when Sloan asked, like, is Cameron going to be okay? And he's like, I think this is the best he's been. Or what? How's the answer? Do you remember?
She says, will Cameron be okay? Yeah, sure. For the first time in his life.
That's what it is. Yeah.
Now the final run. So, yes. Ferris and Sloan have that final, like, conversation. They kiss. And he's like, gotta go.
Yeah, he looks at the time and realizes.
And, right. And the music starts coming in. But he's about to jump the fence and she's like, I love you. And he's like, I love you too. Cuts back to Sloan. He's like, he's gonna marry me. I'm like, oh man. Like, it fucking, like, I'm just like, my heart's pumping. It's such a great, like, final 10 minutes.
Yeah. I saw this movie the first time when I was like 9 or 10. I didn't even see the beginning of it. I remember it was on TV, and I was at my grandma's house, and it was like, oh, Ferris Bueller, yeah, you should watch it. You know, he sneaks out of his house, and he's trying to get away with it. I got the gist of it, and I was like halfway through the movie.
Yeah.
You know? But I remember that scene always sticking with me. And then I remember catching on when Family Guy parodied it, too.
Oh, and yeah, Spider-Man Homecoming pays homage to it.
Exactly.
And it's one of the most famous scenes.
Yeah.
It, like, next to the, like, opening of the actual movie, this scene and maybe Dankeschön are, like, the three, right?
Sure.
Those are the three we all, like, will remember we've seen maybe before even when we saw the movie.
Yeah.
Like, we've seen at least a gif of, or, like, a video or a clip of Ferris jumping, even. But yeah, he has this great run, and what I love about it is there's very little dialogue. The dialogue we get is mostly from the mom and the daughter in the car as the sister like catches Ferris.
Yeah.
They both look at each other and turns into this Western standoff close up. And besides that, it's mostly just like great visual action storytelling, which is something that I didn't know John Hughes was capable of, is that this is an action sequence.
Oh yeah, no, the whole movie is incredibly competently made. I mean, I know it sounds lame to say that, but it is like a really well shot and well lit movie, including those scenes. Like the tension is there. There's so much, it's just oozing with personality.
100%. I'm glad you mentioned that it's made well, because like directed by John Hughes, is an amazing filmmaker. It's also shot by Takashi Fujimoto, who goes by, I think, Fujimoto, and he shot Pretty in Pink, which is another John Hughes movie. But along with that, he shot a lot of Jonathan Demme movies like Silence of the Lambs,
Holy shit,
Philadelphia, Something Wild. He also shot Sixth Sense. He also shot the Denzel Washington like noir movie I've told you about.
Yeah.
Devil in a Blue Dress. This guy's so he got like a really good director for that. He got fucking the Silence of the Lambs guy.
Yeah. Before Silence of the Lambs, but still.
Yeah, shit.
But still, but alas, I mean, like, it's clearly a talented DP.
No, John Hughes knew he was going to do Silence of the Lambs, and then came back. He's like, I can see you have a vision for that in another movie.
Yeah, I can see you directing a cannibal detective movie.
Yeah. I think, like, the reason I'm so impressed by it, because, like I said, it's like a chase action sequence, and I was just like, man, John Hughes fucking directed the shit out of this.
And it has such a distinct tone. Like, the music is obviously so iconic.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, like, everyone remembers the music in that scene. Like, that, it just complements it, right? And then, like...
And it's very Ferris, how he just, like... He runs past a guy barbecuing and steals his drink and drinks it.
Yeah, and then you know, he runs through the kitchen. He's like, no, don't stop. And he runs all the way through. It's like, dinner's ready.
Yeah. He says, don't get up. I remember.
Don't get up.
Like, hey. Yeah. And then he, like, it's like action through character, which is amazing. Mm-hmm. He, like, runs past two girls in a bikini, comes back, hey, Ferris Bueller.
Yeah.
And it's those moments, like, of, like, everything just kind of working for Ferris, where you're like, that's when the movie is just alive. Because you're like, this is such a great invention of a character.
Yeah.
It's the Rube Goldberg machine thing you were telling me. I was just like, everything's just working out. It's so seamless, but there's still a lot of tension because it's cutting back brilliantly to the mom and the daughter and the dad.
Yeah. All closing in on...
all closing in. It's like the Blues Brothers sequence, but in suburbia. And no one knows who they're after, but... I also love that small beat of the dad behind the old lady who's too short for the fucking steering wheel.
He's like trying to figure out how to pass her, but he can't.
Everything's working out. Everything's going well. He gets to the backyard that has a playground, gets on the trampoline, jumps, and it's slow-mo.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like the way the DeLorean is shot in Back to the Future. Mm-hmm. Do you remember the introduction to the DeLorean in Back to the Future?
When doesn't he just open shutters and the DeLorean comes out?
Yeah, but it's shot in a way of just like, look, it's the iconic DeLorean.
Yeah.
But this is the first time we're seeing it. But Robert Zemeckis shot it like this is the fifth movie. And look, it's the DeLorean again.
The DeLorean's back.
Like it's a legacy sequel. Like, look, we're here. It's like kind of like how they shoot the car in Ghostbusters nowadays.
Or the proton packs and stuff. Yeah. All these close-ups.
But they shot it like that, like it's already iconic.
Yeah.
And that's what kind of when Ferris Bueller jumps on that trampoline, that's kind of what it feels like. He's like, look, this is your character. This is Ferris. You all love him.
Yeah, it's made very confidently for sure.
And it earned that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, exactly. It pays off beautifully at the end too.
And you know, this is the stuff I love. It's like a movie star doing movie star shit.
Yeah. And it still has the tension too of like, is he gonna make it in time? Oh shit. Like by doing it in slow motion, it like teases you still with that.
And brilliantly, you think he's like, oh my god, he might make it, and of course it has Ed Rooney coming back last minute, like we talked about, and which is a great choice because by that time you've forgotten about him.
Yeah.
Because he's gotten fucked up so bad, you think the police got him or something. Who knows? But they don't cut back to him for a while, and Ferris doesn't say a single word because he thinks he's caught. He's like, shit, jig is up.
Yeah. Oh, he doesn't say anything. And it's just this awkward silence, and he holds up his keys, like, looking for these, whatever.
And the sister comes and kind of just, like, covers for Ferris. Because, obviously the Charlie Sheen conversation kind of has, like, has had an effect on her. You know what I mean? I was like, why am I hating on my brother?
Yeah, and it plays into that everything works out okay for Ferris, but it's still like a really well done moment because it's like her making the choice to do that for him.
Well,
too.
that's what, it's not just the universe helping him out with good luck. It's like his
Exactly.
sister helping him out.
Yeah.
Which is so brilliant. It's like at the end of the day, his sister was the one that helped Ferris get back.
Yeah.
Because without his sister, he probably would have been fucked. But we cut to the room, and this is such a brilliant, like, it's a screenwriting thing that gives my heart a flutter, where like he gets in bed and like the stereo's still on, and then he suddenly pulls the baseball that he caught at the game.
Oh yeah.
And throws it, and I'm just like, oh, this fucking like lights out. This is an amazing movie.
I know, which we didn't really touch on it much in this podcast, but I do love how like nice he is to his parents. How he's like, oh, I really want to go to school.
I really want to focus on my education.
Yeah. Was he? He's like, okay, pop. Whatever he says to
He's
his
like,
parents.
okay, bye pumpkin, bye pumpkin. He leaves off with the line of just like, life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look for it for a while, you might miss it.
He has a shit-eating grin, and then it freeze frames.
God, it's like when a movie ends on a kiss. I'm like, yeah, this is it. This is the ending.
Yeah, I remember. That's one of the earlier post-credits scenes too. I love how iconic it is. Him coming out in the robe, like, you're still here.
Which is okay. So it's interesting that it's one of the first post-credit scenes, right? I don't know if it is the first, but it's one of the first.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that it is because it's clearly like the audience didn't have a habit of watching till the end, so they have this like other scene that goes on during the credits.
Yeah.
That's very long. But they shot it so long so people would stick through the credits.
Yeah, it's very strategically placed.
Because now we have the habit of like maybe they'll add a little stinger at the end. Like Marvel has kind of Pavlovian dog trained us to.
Yeah, I know, right? The movie ends, we gotta wait.
So thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much to our patrons for supporting this channel. We really appreciate you.
We love you all.
Love you so much. Last but not least, stay nice, dudes.